welcome into the backfield. I'm your host Connor Schaff, and today I will be going over my Week 2 college football top 25 rankings. Now, I will be honest with you, I'm recording this right after watching the Baltimore Ravens versus Buffalo Bills game, so I am a little shell-shocked at the moment. It was quite the game for those of you who did watch, and we'll talk about that more during the week. I just thought I'd say, just in case I lose track of my thoughts a little bit, that game is on the forefront of my mind. Now, you might be asking the question, why did I not record this video Saturday night when all the college football games are? That would be a great question, and I don't really have an answer to that, so let's move swiftly on and get right into the video. So, this week of college football was pretty interesting because we had a slate of games that honestly didn't look that impressive to me. Obviously, the big game of the week for most people was Oklahoma versus Michigan, but there wasn't really a crazy amount of depth this week. You looked at games like Oklahoma versus or Ole Miss versus Kentucky, a game that Ole Miss slipped up on last year. You look at a game like Illinois versus Duke, maybe could have been a big scalp for a big team, but none of those ended up being the case. Instead, we had some pretty wild upsets for some teams that I really would not have expected to lose this early on in the season. And two of them you can see on your screen right now in Florida and Arizona State, which we will talk about here shortly. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't even have Florida on my just missed the cut list. And that's really because they haven't shown anything to deserve being on that list. And this is a good way to get into my criteria for these rankings. I could not care less what the AP poll says, though I do like making fun of the AP poll because it is quite ridiculous sometimes. I also could not care less what CBS or ESPN has as their rankings. In my opinion, the way to rank teams is do not fault teams for playing good teams, but to hinder teams a lot when they lose to bad teams. And you saw this last week when I didn't have either Alabama or Florida State ranked, and it is going to be quite a similar situation this week. So let's get right into the teams that just missed the cut. And we have Arizona State, Indiana, Alabama, Missouri, Baylor, Mississippi State, Tulane, and Florida State. Now, there are four teams kind of in the same bucket here. We have Alabama and Florida State continuing their run from last week in the just missed the cut section, where neither team really showed anything more impressive than what they showed last week to me. Obviously, Alabama, they do recover well. They win 73-0 against a garbage team. It's what you should be doing against a bad opponent. Hopefully, this will be a confidence booster for the team. I want to even say that Ty Simpson didn't miss a pass during the game, so hopefully it's a big confidence booster for him as a player, though I don't really think he was the problem against Florida State. I think that they got crushed in the trenches, which is not really something you can reflect on in a game against a lower tier opponent. I want to say they played UL Monroe. Florida State also beats a garbage team. Don't remember who they played at all. I do know that they won comfortably. And then we look on the other hand at Arizona State and Mississippi State, where Mississippi State, in honestly quite shocking fashion in my opinion, takes down Arizona State. And I thought Arizona State was a top 10 team in the country. I don't think so now, to be completely honest with you. But I think you have to give Mississippi State their plaudits. I don't think there's any world where you can't at least consider Mississippi State for a top 25 spot when you beat a team like Arizona State. Mississippi State has a more impressive win than most of the teams I'll show in this top 25 today. So I definitely think Mississippi State has to be on the board here. And yeah, they had a very impressive performance, and we'll see if they can keep it up. So then we have Indiana. Indiana's just a team on the outside looking in for me. Haven't really seen anything too impressive. I was a little disappointed with their performance in week 1. Week 2 it was better, but they didn't play anybody good, so we'll see how they perform when they start conference play. Tulane I had ranked in my top 25 last week. They beat Northwestern 23-3 in week 1, and they then in week 2 barely beat South Alabama, so I'm now a little bit concerned about the team that I thought was going to make the college football playoffs out of the group of 5. But there's now kind of a new top dog in the group of 5, and I don't even know if it's close to the number 2. Then we have Baylor. Baylor beats SMU this week, a very impressive result, and they lose to Auburn in week 1, a team that you'll see in this video that I am very, very high on. So I do think Baylor at least deserves a mention. And then Missouri, they beat Kansas, I want to say. It was a good result for them. I think they deserve at least a mention, but I don't think they should be ranked like the AP poll has them ranked. We will move on now to 21 through 25. And this is like part 1 of 2 of where I really disagree with the AP poll. And I pretty much just have a complete different slate of teams in. And you'll also see a team I am way lower on than the AP poll has. I will say, I just realized I never actually updated the rankings on the right side. I'm not going to go back and re-record this entire video, so bear with me on this one. I'll go through situations that's important to mention there. Not their rankings, their record. I'll mention their record as we go on. Most of the teams are undefeated. Obviously, Michigan isn't anymore, but we will talk about that when we get there. But I have TCU at 25. TCU crushes North Carolina in week 1 and gets the job done in week 2 as well against a bad opponent. That's actually not true because they didn't play this week. So, yeah, TCU, they really just move into the top 25 because Florida falls out, because Tulane falls out, because SMU falls out, etc. Nebraska, I have at number 24. Nebraska has another good performance. I think this team is a dark horse contender in the Big Ten, and I honestly don't think they're getting enough credit for how good this team could be. They beat Cincinnati week 1. They beat an easy team week 2. So we'll have to see how this team does against a better opponent, really. But I think beating Cincinnati is a good enough result. Iowa State, I have at 23. Now, this is a team I have much, much lower than the AP poll, which I want to say has them in the top 15. And obviously they get a good win over Iowa this week. Iowa's a team that I think could go 8-4 this year, so that is a good result for them. But my issue is that they just barely beat a Kansas State team that goes in, only beats a FCS team in North Dakota by 3 points on a last-minute touchdown, and then this week loses to Army that lost to an FCS school last week. So now this Kansas State win, which you barely won, looks really bad on your resume, to be honest. And I do think that has to be reflected in their ranking. And I have them 1 spot behind Michigan, who obviously lose to Oklahoma this week. And maybe I'm a little disappointed in their performance. I don't really think they ever really felt in this game. But you play a good opponent, you stay in it for most of the game, even though you never really took that next step up. So I think 22 is a fair spot for them. And then BYU. BYU gets the job done once again. They're another team that I had on the outside looking in last week, but they crushed Stanford this week, and they looked good last week. So it's a team I really want to see play a better opponent. But I think once they do, I think this is a pretty fair ranking for them. I don't think BYU plays next week, and I don't think BYU really has a too tough strength of schedule for a while. Just trying to remember what their schedule looks like. I don't think they play another good team until week 5 or 6. So it'll be a while before we really get to see this BYU team get tested. That might be harmful to them, and they might fall the rankings just because other teams do impressive things during the span, but we will see. We move on to 16 through 20, though, starting with the biggest riser of the week, a team I didn't even have on my radar. Obviously, they get a big win versus Boise State last week, and you think Boise State probably just isn't good this year. They lost a lot of players, and Boise State probably just wasn't good. And then USF goes and beats Florida this week. And Florida is a team that pretty much everyone unanimously had them in their top 15. and USF just takes them down. And honestly, they were the better team the entire game. There was no point, even though Florida kept it close, I felt like Florida deserved to win this game, which is awful for when you're playing a team as far of a gap talent-wise from you. Like, you think if you're Florida and you lose to USF, but you outplay USF the entire game and USF just gets lucky with turnovers and stuff, then you have to say fair play there. And Florida would probably still be in the rankings in that situation, but they got dominated by USF. It just wasn't. It was a total beatdown. So I think USF has to be in the top 20. They have got to be the favorite to make the college football playoffs out of the group of 5 right now. So it'll be very interesting to see if they can keep it up. Georgia Tech I have at 19. I don't even know if the AP poll has Georgia Tech ranked. I don't see how you don't have them ranked after their performance against Colorado in week 1, and they keep it up in week 2. I think this is a team I already had on the fringes of my top 25, so it's a team I'm pretty impressed with so far. And they haven't proved anything otherwise than to be in this top 25 at the moment. Ole Miss takes down Kentucky. They get revenge for their loss last year. It was a good performance from them. Maybe a little sketchy at some points, but they get the job done. So I think 18 is a good placement for them behind kind of a run of SEC schools here. At 17, we have Texas A&M. Texas A&M, honestly, is a much, much better performance this week against Utah State than they did last week against UTSA. I don't think either team is very good. I think Texas A&M will really be tested next week when they play Notre Dame. That'll be a very exciting game. But we really just don't know until then if they're really a good team. But I think based on preseason ideas for how good this team is going to be, is a pretty fair ranking. 16, another big riser. We have Auburn. And I think Auburn didn't really do anything impressive this week, but their big rise comes from BYU beating SMU. Or not BYU, Baylor beating SMU, as Auburn beat down on Baylor in week 1. So now Auburn has what looks like this great win over Baylor, and they're a team I thought was a dark horse team as well. They bring in Jackson Arnold as their quarterback from Oklahoma, and this is a team I think is going to be more competitive than people think at this point. So we'll see how they end up performing in the upcoming weeks, but it's such a good start for Auburn. If I was an Auburn fan, I'd be super optimistic right now. Now we get to number 15, where this is kind of the other part where I have quite a few changes compared to the AP poll and my 12th and 13th ranking, as I'm sure you can tell. But I have Oklahoma at number 15. They take down Michigan during the week. It's a team that I'm fairly impressed with so far. I think that John Mateer is getting the job done. I think that you'll play much better opponents than Michigan during this year, so they'll be tested much more, but you have to be happy with their start so far, and there's not really too much to write home about that they've done negatively so far. 14, we have Tennessee. Tennessee plays a nobody this week, and obviously they beat Syracuse last week. They really just jump up in the rankings because of other teams falling. Then let me explain my number 12 and my number 13. Texas Tech, I was higher on than most people coming into the season. They kind of have just moved up with the fallers. Number 12, I have Utah, though, and Utah are a team that I have been super duper impressed with so far. I had Utah as a dark horse team to win the Big 12, and now I want to say I have them as my highest ranked Big 12 team in general. They destroyed a crappy team this week. Last week, though, they had this unbelievable result against UCLA. They are a team I'm very, very high on, and I'm excited to see what they can do against some better opponents, because UCLA definitely doesn't seem like the team we thought they could be. But yeah, this is a team I'm really impressed with, as you can see from the ranking, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just continue to move up. And that is in comparison to South Carolina. South Carolina obviously aren't 0-1, they're 2-0, but it's been two pretty sketchy wins for them. They really struggled to get off to a start against South Carolina State that they played this week. And they end up winning the game by 4 or 5 touchdowns, I think. But it was overall just not as impressive of a performance as you want to see from a team as highly ranked as South Carolina. South Carolina are a team I had ranked at 7 or 8, I think, and I have them dropping all the way down to 11, just because I'm pretty concerned with their performance for the rest of the season after their game against South Carolina State. But we move into the top 10, and I have one riser here, but I will say my top 7 remain the same, so we'll run through them pretty quickly. We'll start off with number 10, Clemson. I actually have Clemson moving behind Notre Dame after this week. I think the thing that I kind of thought of this week, there are really 2 things. First, Clemson looks awful for 3 quarters against Troy. They do not do well at all. They only end up winning the game by 11 points. They win 27-16. They were down at halftime. It just wasn't what you expect to see out of a top 10 team. And on top of that, I thought a little bit more about Notre Dame's performance in comparison to Clemson's performance. Notre Dame went to Miami and kept the game within 3 points, while Clemson was at home and lost. So it just wasn't a very inspiring performance from Clemson this week, and I think I've had a bit of a change of heart from their week 1 game. And that's kind of the same point I have about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I just have moving up a little bit ahead of Clemson for that exact same reason. And really, their big test will come against Texas A&M. If they lose that game, they might be done for in the playoff race, just because they don't really play that many other good teams. But I think that'll be a very, very fun game to watch and an interesting outcome to see. Then we have Illinois at number 8, and Illinois are the final riser for me for the week as they crush Duke. And when all of these teams behind them have shown some level of inconsistency, at least out of the teams we expected to be good, Illinois have not shown any inconsistency. They crushed their opponent week 1, and then week 2 come and destroy Duke, a team that some people had on the fringes of their top 25. So I think that's a very impressive result for Illinois, and you got to be pretty happy if you're an Illinois fan. And honestly, if you didn't have Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State in your division, you would be a little optimistic about what you could do in the Big Ten. But I don't think they really have too much hope with those 3 teams ahead of them. Then, like I said, my top 7 remain the same. So Georgia State at 7. They play some garbage team this week. I don't remember who. I don't actually think they had a great performance, to be honest with you, but I didn't really want to drop them down too much, given that no one really solidified themselves as a top team. In Illinois, maybe I just need to see one more game from them. Number 6, you have LSU. LSU also beats Louisiana Tech this week, and it honestly also wasn't a super duper impressive performance, but they still get the job done. And then we have our top 5. Miami stays at 5. They beat an FCS school. Texas stays at number 4. They beat who did they play? Did they play UTEP? No. They beat San Jose State. It was an awful first quarter from them, but they pulled it together in the end and looked much better throughout the game. Oregon, maybe as one of the most ridiculous scorelines you'll hear this weekend, they beat Oklahoma State 69-3. That's what I expect Oregon to beat a Division III school by, not Oklahoma State. Talk about one of the most dysfunctional programs in all of college football at the moment. It's absolutely insane that happened with them. But yeah, they stay at number 3. I thought about even moving them up, but I just didn't want to change with my top 2 because I'm pretty happy with it right now. Ohio State gets the job done against Grambling State, an FCS school, and Penn State gets the job done against FIU. They shut them out, so they keep it going too. But that's all I have for today. Make sure to let me know your rankings down below, and let me know what games surprised you this week and what games you're looking forward to next week. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Interact with the video in any way you can, as it all helps grow the channel. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.